The moment 12-year-old Amara Johnson stepped onto Flight 762, she never imagined a simple seat could become the stage for a lesson in power, dignity, and unexpected justice. Just as she reached first class, a tall, middle-aged white man was sprawled across her window seat, scrolling through his phone as if the airline belonged to him, and when she politely asked him to move, his dismissive smirk told her that appearances still fooled people, even when they were about to pay a heavy price for it. "Excuse me, sir. I believe you're in my seat," Amara said firmly, holding out her boarding pass that clearly read 1A, her name elegantly printed alongside the airline's emblem. But he barely glanced up, scoffing. "Little girl, you must be mistaken. This is my seat," as though a black girl in first class could only be a fantasy or a trick of imagination. Passengers nearby stiffened, sensing tension, and whispers traveled down the aisle like wildfire. But Amara, raised in the shadow of one of the world's most powerful billionaires, had been trained since birth to stay composed under pressure, to convert perceived weakness into an unshakable front. And she didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly extended her boarding pass again, her voice steady and unwavering. "Sir, this seat is assigned to me, and I kindly request that you move to your assigned seat." The man's laugh, loud and condescending, echoed through the cabin, his arrogance fueled by ignorance and privilege. "I've been flying first class longer than you've been alive, kid. Maybe your daddy can explain this to you later." At that moment, the cabin shifted, every pair of eyes on the conflict, some horrified, some curious, some recording on their phones, while Amara's calm gaze revealed nothing of her inner calculation. She had already dialed a direct line to her father, Leonard Johnson, tech billionaire, airline owner, and philanthropist, whose wealth and influence spanned continents, because she had learned that true power did not announce itself with shouts, but with precision and authority. The flight attendant finally arrived, a woman with decades of experience who should have known better, her eyes flicking first to the man in the suit and then to Amara, already revealing a bias that would soon cost her credibility. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, but her tone suggested she had already made her judgment. Amara handed over her boarding pass without a word, and the attendant scrutinized it unnecessarily, as if she expected to find forgery, while the man in the suit refused to provide any proof, his entitlement painting a clear picture of prejudice. "Perhaps we can find Miss Johnson another seat?" the attendant suggested weakly, inadvertently validating the man's arrogance and dismissing the rightful passenger's claim. And in that moment, Amara knew it was time to escalate. She pressed the phone to her ear, speaking in a calm, commanding tone. "Dad, there's an issue on the flight. A passenger refuses to move from my seat and is making discriminatory comments. The crew is failing to enforce proper protocol." The man rolled his eyes, still underestimating her, still convinced that the world would bend around his assumption that a young black girl couldn't possibly hold power or authority. But Amara's father, hearing the situation, responded with icy precision, instructing her to put him on speakerphone. And the cabin instantly grew silent as Leonard Johnson's unmistakable voice filled the first-class cabin, commanding attention with the gravitas of a man who had built a global empire and had zero tolerance for injustice. "Mr. Prescott," Leonard began, addressing the white businessman, "you have just made the gravest error of your life. You have disrespected my daughter, ignored protocol, and exposed your own biases in front of dozens of witnesses. You will rectify this immediately." Prescott's smirk faltered, confusion and fear flickering across his face as he realized he was no longer dealing with a child, but with someone who represented a global authority. Passengers began to murmur, phones raised, cameras capturing the moment in real time. Leonard continued, laying out the facts with deliberate clarity. "She is assigned to seat 1A. You have no boarding pass to prove entitlement. Your actions violate federal civil rights laws and airline policy. Security and airline management are being notified as we speak." Prescott's hands shook, his voice weak and apologetic, as he attempted to justify himself, but Leonard's voice cut through every excuse like a blade. "No, you are accountable for your actions. This is not a negotiation, this is justice." Meanwhile, the flight attendant, realizing her misjudgment and bias had been publicly exposed, began to sweat, her earlier confidence replaced with the stark awareness that she too would face consequences for siding with prejudice instead of protecting passengers. Leonard instructed Amara to remain calm, which she did, her posture elegant, her composure flawless. And within moments, the captain's voice came over the intercom, informed by Leonard's direct call, announcing that Flight 762 would return to the gate due to a passenger conduct issue, causing murmurs of shock throughout the cabin. Prescott's face drained of color, every passenger now witnessing the real cost of his assumptions, as Leonard's voice continued, detailing the immediate removal of the discriminatory passenger and the negligent flight attendant, and the cabin erupted with a mixture of gasps, applause, and the clatter of phones recording history in the making. Security and airline executives boarded quickly, moving with the efficiency of professionals trained for crises, while Prescott gathered his belongings, realizing that his entire career, reputation, and credibility were unraveling in front of a global audience, and the flight attendant faced a professional reckoning she could not escape. Amara, finally taking her rightful seat, allowed herself a subtle smile, her father's pride palpable even through the phone line, as passengers looked on, some in awe, some in disbelief, recognizing that the young girl before them had commanded respect, upheld her rights, and exposed institutional and personal prejudice with nothing more than composure, strategy, and the backing of authority.
Leonard spoke once more, his voice resonating through the cabin. Let this be a lesson. Discrimination has consequences, and appearances deceive. Underestimating anyone based on age, race, or gender can be the most costly mistake of your life. Prescott, escorted by security, could barely process the humiliation, his arrogance replaced entirely by fear and regret, while the flight attendant, witnessing her complicity, understood that her career had just ended. The remaining passengers, now seated and attentive, captured every moment, knowing they had witnessed a rare display of accountability and power. Social media was already alive with videos of the incident, each clip illustrating a dramatic reversal in which prejudice met authority and justice in real time. Amara settled into her seat, graceful and composed, the leather beneath her a reminder that entitlement does not equal legitimacy, that wealth or youth does not excuse respect, and that calm courage often triumphs over aggression. She reflected on the situation, understanding that the lessons learned here would ripple far beyond the confines of a single flight, demonstrating to everyone that discrimination carries consequences when challenged wisely. As the plane finally lifted into the sky, the cabin quiet, but for the occasional applause and whispered admiration, Amara Johnson looked out the window, her father's voice softly praising her, and knew that she had done more than reclaim a seat. She had reminded an entire flight that assumptions are dangerous and that sometimes the person you dismiss is exactly the one capable of changing everything, proving that courage paired with strategy is more powerful than arrogance or prejudice, and that dignity, when exercised correctly, commands respect no matter the odds.